We're going to take a look at the OBS setting files that I have configured for my OBS. So we'll start with the general. These are my general settings, so we can take a quick look here. Just going to scroll down. Not too much to discuss here. For streaming, I do my own streaming on YouTube. Basically, you have to go to YouTube and get your streaming keys. And this is basically the settings that I use for YouTube settings. There are other services that you can use, such as Twitch, Facebook Live, Restream.io, and Twitter. The server settings, you have primary for the YouTube ingest server. You do also have backup as an option, but this seems to work pretty good, and I believe this is also the default. For outputs, you want to basically have your audio setting. Well, we'll get to the audio settings later, but let's look at streaming. We've got audio track 1, constant bitrate. I've set mine to 10,000 and a key interval frame of 2. Got the preset quality, the max quality, and profile is set to high. Also got psycho visual tuning, and yeah, I think this doesn't pop up anything here. GPU is set to 0. I've tried other values where that gives me problems, so setting it to 0 is fine. We got the max B frame set to 2. This is for desktop recording. I have basically my settings here. I click this, basically generate files without this space. And audio track 1, again, I'm using a constant bitrate. Here I'm actually using 65536 kilobytes. My keyframe is 2. Preset again is set to max quality. Profile is high. Got the psycho visual tuning selected. GPU setting is 0, and my max B frame is set to 2. For audio, I am only using the audio track 1, but yeah, as you can see, the only thing that I've changed is the audio bitrate, which is set to 128. I haven't done anything here for a replay buffer. Next, we have the audio. And what I've done here is I've disabled all the audio inputs. You want to do that because you don't want to have any surprises where some of the audio inputs are live and maybe you want to be on mute, and you'll probably have surprises where you start recording your voices without knowing it. So or if you're in streaming, right, you don't want to be streaming audio thinking that you're set to mute. So the thing to do is disable all your audio devices here, and later on I'll show you how to add the actual audio devices back in. For a meter, got the decay rate set to fast. Peak meter type is simple peak. Scroll down here, we've got default monitoring. I actually don't do any monitoring, so that's fine. My video settings, this is my resolution stuff, so yeah. And finally, this is where you can set your hotkeys in terms of wanting to start and stop streaming, or start and stop your recording for the desktop, or mute and unmute yourself in terms of the actual mic. So those are all available here. Then we have advanced settings. Advanced settings, I've basically just left the default. I haven't made any changes. now to the actual OBS. This is how I basically do it. So you want to, for the scene that you have, let's say we've got the small desktop here. I've got dual monitors, so I've got different scenes here. This is basically recording off one of my smaller monitors. As you can see, one of my sources is the Blue Yeti microphone. So the way you would just do that is you would click on the plus sign here for your scene, and you would click on audio input capture, and then you would select, you would type something in here, right? And let's see if I can get the properties to show up. So yeah, you would have this drop down where you would basically select your input. And in this case, I want to record using my webcam. So I've got the Blue Yeti microphone, which is a USB microphone connected to my system. So that's what I use. And then you would click OK, since I've already got it set up. That's fine. So then this is how you're basically adding audio to your thing. That way you can enable, basically you can enable and disable your audio by clicking on here. And the other thing that you want to do is, let's see if I can, we have advanced audio properties. So if you click on that, one of the things that I do is I've set a sync offset for my microphone. You'll have to test, but basically I've set it to 80 milliseconds. What this ends up doing is, as you're talking and recording yourself, you'll notice there's like a slight kind of out of sync of the audio that you're hearing and watching your lips move. So you have to basically dial in the sync offset so that your audio patterns match the visual clues, right, as you're speaking, and it looks like there's no delays. Otherwise, it's the audio and video being out of sync. It just starts to really look odd when you're watching someone's lips move and there's a delay in audio, or the audio comes before the lips actually move. So that's what basically this does, right? And again, you just do that by going to clicking on the microphone and going to advanced settings. The next thing that I've done is I've set my filters for the recording. So if you go on here and click on filters, I have 3 filters here. We have the noise suppression, we have the compressor, and then we've got the limiter. For noise suppression, not much happening here. I just left that at the default. For the compressor, I've dialed in these settings, and maybe I'll discuss how I arrived at those settings in a separate video. And then finally, you got the limiter. The limiter is basically setting the actual volume limit. So what happens is if you speak too loud, the volume could go over the red and it starts clipping. So what the limiter does is it prevents the clipping by limiting how loud your voice can get. Therefore, you never experience any clipping because the limiter is smart enough to keep the volume on the high end, just below before it starts to clip. And it's okay to get into this red area. What you don't want to do is get outside of this red area. Just a quick look at compressors. We have the ratio and threshold. Usually ratios, you want to set it to 4:1. For my threshold, that's basically when I start to speak. There is a volume threshold, I guess, or a noise threshold. I've got mine set to 18 dB. And again, this input is going to basically depend on the microphone that you're using. Different microphones have different sensitivity. Next is the attack and release. Attack is basically how quickly the compressor will kick in. and release is basically how fast it will release. Finally, you got the output gain. This is what basically controls the volume gain from your microphone. So you'll have a gain, like especially on my microphone on the Blue Yeti, there is actually a hardware gain knob on there. And what I like to do is I try to keep it to a minimum level as possible, because the gain on the Blue Yeti mic, if you set it too high, it's really sensitive and it starts to pick up background noises. So you don't want those background noises getting into your audio. So what you want to do is find a reasonable gain where your audio is being captured clear, and when you're not talking, like now, you're not picking up any background noises, like for instance, like your PC fan or background noises in your room or wherever you are in your surrounding area. Once you got that dialed in, what you have to do is basically use the gain from the compressor and increase it to a level where you're getting into the red area. So right now I've got my limiter set, so it will never go outside this limiter level. So what you want to do is either do this before you've added the limiter, or you click on this eyeball kind of thing here and you click on it, and that will basically disable the limiter from getting kicked in. And now you can try to dial in your gain, and you basically want to get into the red level, right? When you're talking really loud. Once you've got that dialed in, you add your limiter, and that will prevent the volume from getting clipped. So that's basically how you do the audio filter on OBS. You have your noise suppression. The noise suppression is basically really good to have, because it will also eliminate any background noises, and it works phenomenally well. Like even when I'm typing and I'm not talking, you will not hear the typing on my keyboard or me clicking on the mouse. The only time you hear the typing and clicking is while you're talking. And as you're talking, if you start to type or click on something, those will get into the recording, because at that point the compressor had kicked in. It's thinking you're talking and it's starting to allow the audio to get recorded. But yeah, if you're talking and you take a pause and you start typing in something, if you're doing like a screencast of a coding video, remarkably, those typing noise will not make it into your audio. And that's the way you want to do things. And so that's basically what the noise suppression does. So we have taken a look at some of the settings that I have for my OBS. And I think that pretty much rounds up everything. Yeah, that's everything for my OBS settings, and that's it for now.